Welcome into another episode of my Dynasty Fantasy Football YouTube. Today I'm looking at Dynasty Sleepers. These are players that are rostered in every Dynasty league, but I think have potential to do way better than how low their ranking is. As always, make sure to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe if you haven't. Let's go. So, our first one, Zach Charbonnet, so the running back in Seattle. And if we look at his past statistics, he was okay as a rookie last year. 108 carries, 462 yards and a touchdown, 4.3 yards a carry, and 33 catches for 209 yards. So he was fine. Kenneth Walker remained the starter. But let's look at the current situation. So he's still sharing the backfield with Kenneth Walker. The new coaching staff, though, under Mike McDonald and Ryan Grubb, has no loyalty to either player. And Charbonnet still has the same second-round draft capital that Walker has. So while I would project, obviously, that Walker is the starter, we really have no idea how this split is going to look. Now, how could Zach Charbonnet become relevant? Obviously, if Kenneth Walker gets hurt, or if Charbonnet earns more playing time in year 2 as he adjusts to the NFL. I mean, Walker struggled with injuries last year, so it is possible. And realistically, is there any reason why Zach Charbonnet might not earn more playing time? He was pretty good last year, 4.3 yards a carry on the time that he had. So we'll have to see what happens. But I do think he has more upside than people are giving him credit for. On Keep Trade Cut, he is RB31, which I think is a little bit low. I have him at RB26, 5 spots higher. And just to kind of close out on Zach Charbonnet, to me, Zach Charbonnet was a very good prospect. Similar level of a prospect to Kenneth Walker, actually. A good prospect, not elite, but a good prospect. They're different prospects. Charbonnet is better in some ways, more of a 3-down skill set, maybe less of that tackle breaking that Walker offers. Charbonnet doesn't really offer that. But Walker struggled with injuries and some efficiency down the stretch in 2023. He looked a little worn out at times. At the end of the day, Zach Charbonnet is a player who averaged 7 yards a carry, scored 14 touchdowns, and had 37 catches in his final college season at UCLA. A big school. He didn't just become bad. I don't think. He didn't look bad. It's not like Tank Bigsby, who came in and was bad. Zach Charbonnet was not bad. So eventually, this type of talent you see in these statistics finds a way to emerge. And I do think that somehow that's going to happen. I don't know how it's going to happen, but Zach Charbonnet is a good player. We know he's a good player. And it's not like he showed he was bad. So I would roster him in my dynasty leagues because these are the types of running backs you want, because running backs can gain a lot of value very fast if the situation changes. Next up, Tucker Kraft. So Tucker Kraft, for me, has been a player I've talked about all offseason, and I think people are just still too low on Tucker Kraft. Last year, he had 31 catches, 355 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1.8 catches, and 20.9 yards a game. But those statistics don't really tell the story of Tucker Kraft. Kraft saw almost no playing time until Luke Musgrave got hurt. That makes sense. Musgrave was drafted a round earlier than Kraft. He got the first shot at the starting job. But then when Musgrave got hurt, Kraft came in and he dominated. Over the final 7 weeks, Kraft was a star. 3.7 catches, 44.6 yards a game, 90% snap share or more in 6 of those 7 games. Now, looking at Kraft's current situation, it's tough. He has an insanely crowded wide receiver depth chart. He's competing with Musgrave for the starting job. And he's dealing with the torn pec, which is further depressing his price, making him even more of a sleeper, I would argue, because the price is even lower. Now, what's the path to relevance for Tucker Kraft? Kraft did more as the starter than Musgrave did. Kraft remained the starter in the playoffs, even when Musgrave returned. And I know some people are going to say, well, Musgrave was recovering from lacerated kidney, so-and-so. Musgrave had a few games to recover, and you wouldn't be cleared for playing with a lacerated kidney if it weren't healthy. So while I get that, I think that Kraft remained the starter, and I'm not sure Where is the evidence that that's going to reverse itself? We saw this with Mark Andrews and Hayden Hurst. After a little bit of time, the player who was more effective became the starter, Mark Andrews, even though they had lower draft capital. Now, Kraft, keep trade cut dynasty value, tight end 22. I have him tight end 17. I'm not super confident in Tucker Kraft. Honestly, the most likely scenario is that neither Tucker Kraft nor Luke Musgrave is very relevant. But if I have to take a shot on one, I'd rather the one who's 7 spots lower in Tucker Kraft, rather Luke Musgrave, who's a lot more expensive and a lot higher for no reason, really. Now, to close out on Tucker Kraft, I can't help but remember that when Kraft was the starter, he impressed me more than Musgrave. He looked better. He had more plays. And also, he played that lion's share of snaps that we never saw Musgrave do. Kraft also produced far more in college than Musgrave. Musgrave really didn't actually produce in college. He was more athletic, but he didn't really produce as a receiver in college at all. Now, the problem with the Packers is they drafted Kraft and Musgrave thinking they'd use a lot of 12 personnel. And that makes sense. They had a weak wide receiver core. They didn't really have anyone. But they found Dontavian Wicks. They developed Jaden Reed really quickly. So now I feel like the Packers are going to have to play a lot of 11 personnel, more than they expected to. Now, between Kraft and Musgrave, only Kraft can play every down. Kraft is a far better blocker than Musgrave. Kraft was a lot of the reason that the running game opened up some holes down the stretch. And at the very, better in pass blocking, better at every sort of blocking than Musgrave. Now, at the very least, people are far overconfident in Musgrave greater than Kraft. They're way too confident in that. I think it's, 53-47 in Kraft's favor. The prices say that it's like 85% that Musgrave is way better. And I just disagree with that. So I have no Musgrave. Kraft is the one that I like as a sleeper. Now, if you like my YouTube content, you should sign up for the Patreon. You get my rankings, access to the Discord, and the ability to ask in advance questions for these YouTube videos and to ask questions for my special Patreon only videos, which I did a week ago. First one a week ago. Tiers began at just $6 a month. And all of that money goes toward allowing me to create independent content where I can say kind of what I want. It's not controlled by the corporate interests or editors. The very, very controlling, as you know, most of your favorite fantasy analysts on these company videos, a lot of the time it's all scripted. The company says you can say this, you can't say this, so-and-so. So we don't have that here. I can say whatever I want. I can curse if I want, whatever. Nobody's going to take the show off the air. So I appreciate all of your support because independent support makes independent content thrive. And plus, it's fun. Patreon is fun. I promise it's fun. I'll help you win some fantasy leagues. It's really active in season as well. So check it out, and I promise you won't regret it. Next up, Wan'Dale Robinson. So I've always kind of had a soft spot for Wan'Dale Robinson, but his dynasty rank is the one that makes the least sense to me. So we'll get into that. In 2022, he had 23 catches, 227 yards, touchdown, 3.8 catches, 37.8 yards a game. But then he had the ACL tear. Right as he was emerging as a really good player, the ACL tear came, which sucks. But then last year, despite kind of not being healthy for a large portion of the beginning of the year, he still delivered 60 catches, 525 yards and touchdown, 4 catches and 35 yards a game. One of the Giants' 3 top weapons alongside Darius Slayton and Darren Waller. Wow, that's sad that those were the 3 top weapons. But solid volume despite horrible quarterback play and the ACL tear in 2022, which still held him back this year. Now, Wan'Dale Robinson is still fully healthy now from the ACL tear, finally fully healthy. He's just 23 years old, so he's younger than like Ricky Pearsall. Ricky Pearsall is older than Wan'Dale Robinson, just as a comparison. Robinson is the Giants' clear wide receiver 2 behind Malik Nabers. Robinson will play in the slot, and now Darren Waller, who was 3rd on the Giants in targets and number 1 in targets per game, is gone. Saquon Barkley is gone. So they will be leaning on Wan'Dale Robinson, who has shown talent with more targets available to him. Now, what's the path to relevance for Wan'Dale Robinson? Whenever Robinson has been healthy, he has actually earned targets at a good rate. I mean, we're talking 3.8 catches, 4 catches a game, despite not being healthy for a majority of that time. He seemed on the verge of a breakout before his ACL tear in 2022. And the Giants are going to be losing. They are a bad team. So I think there are a lot of game scripts that will help Wan'Dale Robinson. Despite, though, his second-round draft capital, all of the opportunity, and a proven target earner, he's still wide receiver 80 in Dynasty. That makes no sense. I think it's just he's on the Giants. People don't care. The Giants suck. Dismissed. I can't get there. I don't have him that high. It's not like I have him wide receiver 40. I have him wide receiver 62. It's a ranking 18 spots higher than his keep, trade, cut ranking. So I think there's a lot more potential than wide receiver 80 would say. And to close out on Wan'Dale Robinson, I think a very talented player. He was very athletic. He got second-round draft capital. Pretty good, but dismissed in Dynasty ranks. The Giants cannot just throw everything at Malik Neighbors. They will need another receiving weapon. The only alternatives are Darius Slayton, who is just okay, and we know that, and Jalen Hyatt, who was a total bust as a rookie, really, really bad. Never earned any playing time. Robinson is locked in as a starter at the slot wide receiver. There is no question about that. That's where he played in almost all of his snaps. The Giants will not use any 12 personnel without Darren Waller. Even with Darren Waller in 2023, the Giants used 11 personnel 73% of the time, 5th most in the NFL. As crazy as this is, I would expect that to be even higher in 2024. They are not going to trot out 12 personnel with Theo Johnson and Daniel Bellinger. That is not going to happen. So they will be an 11 personnel team, and Wan'Dale Robinson will capitalize on that. So I love him as a dynasty sleeper. Now, I've got some NFL news today, so let's just jump into it. We'll talk about all of it, kind of run through it quickly. First up, the Justin Jefferson extension. Now, contract terms, 4 years, $140 million, $110 million guaranteed, runs through 2028. Basically, it's an ironclad deal through 2027. Insanely low cap hits the next 2 years. Jefferson's dynasty value, I still have him wide receiver 2. The only reason he's not wide receiver 1 is that Jamar Chase is a year younger and tied to an elite quarterback in Joe Burrow. I do not believe that J.J. McCarthy's ceiling is anywhere near what Joe Burrow is. If J.J. McCarthy is Kirk Cousins, I think you should be thankful. I think you should be thankful for that. But I think that's his ceiling. Now, of course, a 21-year-old Kirk Cousins is worth a lot. But that's his ceiling, not Joe Burrow. So that's the only reason I have Jefferson at 2 and not 1. Because he is the best wide receiver in the league. Next up, the Christian McCaffrey extension. This one was kind of out of nowhere, a little bit to me. 2 years, $38 million extension on top of the 2 years he already had, runs through 2027. So it added $8 million to 2024 to 2025 with $24 million in added guarantees. So essentially what this did was it locked CMC in for the next 2 years. He was locked in this year, obviously. Guaranteed pretty much all of his 2025 money and probably gives him a little bit of guarantees for 2026. My guess is that the 2027 year is a bloated cap hit with minimal guarantees that he probably will not actually see. So more than likely, he'll be there for 3 years. I have him running back 4. At this point, the risk is all age. It's going to be hard for me to ever have another CMC share because he's just going to cost too much. He's a first-round startup pick in 1 QB leagues, second-round startup pick in Superflex leagues. I just can't ever do it. So the last thing to talk about with CMC, though, is this deal occurred right after the 49ers post-June 1 cut of Eric Armstead came off the books. Does this mean that the Brandon Ayuk extension is coming soon now that the 49ers have like that $17 million of cap space? This didn't take up, or really, actually, I think it cleared a little bit of cap space for them this year. So they have even more space for the Ayuk extension. So is that coming? Maybe. I think it's something to look for. So we'll look for that. Next up, Darren Waller retires. I wish he would retire from his music career. Waller's probably done. Until he formally retires, you probably shouldn't cut him in the deepest leagues, but he can go in most leagues. I have no interest in him. He's tight end 43. I think he's done. And again, I really hope he just ends his music career before it starts. Would be nice. Next up, small piece of news. Logan Thomas signs with the 49ers. He's already 33, which is older than I think people think. He's a converted quarterback. probably done, but oddly, he had a decent impact in 2023 for the Commanders. 55 catches, 496 yards, 4 touchdowns, 3.4 catches, and 31 yards a game. I think that's a lot more than people think, but it's just too many targets in San Francisco for Thomas to do anything. Even if Kittle somehow went down, I still don't think you'd be able to play Logan Thomas because now you have Debo, you have Ayuk, you have Ricky Pearsall all there, plus Christian McCaffrey. There's just no way for Thomas to do anything. So the one thing is it's probably the end of the Cameron Law 2 stash. I can finally stop talking about him, but kind of a sad moment for me there. Now, going a little long here, but I do have one Patreon question. We'll just jump right into that. Thoughts on the Packers receiving room? Well, it's interesting. We talked about that a little bit. Who do you want the most shares of? Tucker Kraft. Is Christian Watson still the one when healthy? Well, among wide receivers, Watson was not the wide receiver one at all. Last year, Jayden Reed had 4 catches and 49.6 yards a game. Watson, 3.1 catches, 46.9 yards a game. Dubs, 3.5 catches, 39.6 yards a game. And Wicks, 2.6 catches, 38.7 yards a game. So Reed is the one getting the volume, especially since he wasn't a full-time player and was a rookie. He also got rushing touches. And Reed can play outside. A lot of people say, oh, he cannot play outside. He was only a slot receiver. No, in college, Jayden Reed played outside. So it is possible for him to do that. He has that ability. We will see if it happens. If all 4 wide receivers remain healthy, they'll all hurt each other. Nobody will be totally trustworthy. But of the group, Jayden Reed is the one who gets manufactured touches. There are plays that are designed for Jayden Reed. So he's my first choice. Christian Watson would be my second choice. I think he has upside as the outside receiver. Romeo Doubs is the fantasy nightmare. It's the one who plays a lot, is decent, and crushes the guys who actually have upside. I kind of wish Romeo Doubs could just go away, and then Jayden Reed would play in the slot. Christian Watson would be kind of your X, and Dontavian Wicks would be kind of your Z. Romeo Doubs kind of being able to do everything really is an annoyance that makes it hard to trust anyone in this room. And Romeo Doubs is not a bad player. He's just not an exciting player. So that's kind of the issue. You'll never be able to trust him for fantasy. So yeah, it's Jayden Reed if I had to pick one. Now, if you liked the video, make sure to drop a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. As always, the best way to support the channel is to subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notifications bell so you can be notified about all my exciting content as it drops. Of course, if you want my best fantasy football advice, it's available on the Patreon. Dynasty, redraft, rookie, start sit, and more is all available on there. And every sign up, as I said, helps support my independent content that I'm doing here. But once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all later.